Hello, my name is Ben Friedman here from Ben and Brand See a Movie presents The Wild Wild West, where we break down the filmography of Wes Anderson, all the eccentricity and the characters in honor of March Madness. And with me, as always, is my co-host for Wild Wild West, Jalal Ahmad.
Hey, Ben. How's it going?
Pretty good, man. I'm very excited to talk about this movie in particular. This feels like the accumulation of a lot of Wes Anderson movies kind of just coming together. So I'm really excited to talk about this one in particular.
Excellent.
Let's just talk about the Grand Budapest Hotel. Jalal, are you ready to jump in?
Let's do it.
All right, man. So the Grand Budapest Hotel comes out in 2014. It is a comedy drama film written and directed by who else but Wes Anderson. Interesting
Mr. Wes.
This is a screenplay by Wes Anderson. It is not by any of the other co-creators he usually has, like either Noah Baumbach, Roman Coppola, Owen Wilson. This is a sole credit to him. And this film follows an ensemble cast led by Monsieur Gustave, played by Ralph Fiennes. He is a famed concierge of a 20th century mountainside hotel in a fictional country. Basically, what happens is after a wealthy woman dies and leaves Monsieur her fortune, it becomes a plot of getting the money and trying to basically kill Monsieur. And that is the overall story of the film. This cast is wild. And just from kind of top to bottom, I'll break down the big players. You have Ralph Fiennes, Tony Revolori, and I believe what is his first major film appearance, Adrian Brody, Willem Dafoe, Saoirse Ronan when she's very young in her career, Tilda Swinton under a ton of makeup, Edward Norton, Jeff Goldblum, Harvey Keitel, Bill Murray, Jason Schwartzman, Leah Sudducks, Owen Wilson, Bob Balaban, Wallace Wolodarski, just the whole ensemble of Wes Anderson characters and actors. They come to play in this movie.
Yes, they did.
And this film comes out in a very interesting year in 2014 for film. 2014 is one of my favorite, underrated years for filmography. Definitely, I think, of the 21st century. I think you could make the argument that it is the best. That year, you get such hits as Birdman, which wins Best Picture. You get Whiplash that year. Boyhood is that year. The Lego Movie, Guardians of the Galaxies that year. I'm just trying to think of the big ones that are nominated.
Babadook.
Yes, the Babadook's nominated for that year. I'm trying to think what else hits that year. God, look, I'm just looking at the list real quick. You got American Sniper, Imitation Game, Selma, Foxcatcher, which is the dramatic turn for Steve Carell. Reese Witherspoon comes out in Wild, which is a huge movie. Just it's Nightcrawler. Nightcrawler is one of my favorite movies.
Nightcrawler, yeah.
There's so much great in this this 2014 year. I think the Academy Awards are really a great ceremony this year. And this is the first Wes Anderson film that actually has a pretty great amount of success at the Academy Awards. Usually he'll get maybe a nomination for screenplay in the case of Fantastic Mr. Fox Animated, maybe some small production design, costume design here or there, but it's maybe one or two awards most. This year he gets, and let me count, he gets 9 Academy Award nominations. Breaking them down, he is nominated, and I'll say the ones that he's nominated first before I say the ones he won for. He's nominated for Best Production Design, Original Score, Makeup and Hairstyling, Film Editing, Costume Design, Cinematography, Original Screenplay, Director, and Picture, which also marks the first Best Director, and I believe only Best Director nomination in Wes Anderson's career. He wins Best Production Design, Best Original Score, Best Makeup and Hairstyling, and Best Costume Design. So he wins 4 out of the 9. So it's a pretty impressive haul for the Grand Budapest Hotel. And like I said, it feels like the accumulation that I described, because this one is, for many, has the eccentricities and fun of a Wes Anderson film with the prestige, with also just the production design of a Wes Anderson. It feels like some of the larger characters that you would see in maybe a Royal Tenenbaums and Steve Zissou, mixed with the production design of Steve Zissou and Moonrise, kind of with the quieter sensibilities of some of his smaller indie films where he started off with Rushmore and Bottle Rocket and Darjeeling. It's an emotional story. It kind of has it all. And it all comes together in 2014 with the Grand Budapest Hotel. That's kind of my thesis on this. This is his movie. It's all coming together in this like one idea that encompasses everything Wes Anderson is best at, even if it's not my favorite Wes Anderson film. And I don't even know if it's my top 3 favorite Wes Anderson films, but that's not an insult on this movie. I really like this movie.
Very good. Yeah. Funny enough, if we can go back, 2014 was actually the year that I remember that I actually started paying a little bit more attention to movies. I don't exactly remember what it was, but I remember that year, like we were naming off the 2014 list, and what popped into my head was Chris Stuckman's best of 2014 list. And then I remembered so many movies, and I actually ended up watching a good number of the ones on that list because they all seemed like a lot of fun. Grand Budapest Hotel is one of those that I've always like been meaning to go watch it, and this actually forced me to sit down and actually do it, and I'm happy I did.
Yeah, I had the same thing. I specifically remember, I think this is the year I started watching Chris Stuckman's videos on YouTube.
The algorithm works in mysterious ways, it seems.
Along with Jeremy Johns, I think he gets started around 2009, 2010. So he's had that 4 or 5 year mark for YouTube career. And like, I'm at this point, I would be sophomore or junior in high school, which means I am at the very least 16, probably 17, when a bunch of these movies start coming out. So like, you know, with Nightcrawler, that's an adult sensibility film that the older you are, the more you're going to appreciate those stories and those characters. Same with like Whiplash and Birdman. Birdman, you really have to have a knowledge of what the Hollywood industry has become because of superhero movies to really enjoy. Grand Budapest kind of has that all too, where it's just like, it's Wes Anderson. The more you know about Wes Anderson movies, the more you're going to appreciate this movie, I feel like. And with that all said, let's just kind of just start off with the character. And it's the character who's right now sweeping in the Wild Wild West bracket. I know he has officially got into the Elite 8. He's shown no signs of stopping. I don't think he's had a game where he's been below 75% in like winning percentage. It's Monsieur Gustave, who's played by Ralph Fiennes. I'm a little shocked by this one because he was the number 1 seed. Because if you had to pull a character from the Grand Budapest Hotel to call the main character, it is hard.
It's without a doubt him. Yeah.
Him. I was very surprised. I thought people would be more leaning towards Zero as kind of the guy they lean towards and say, that's our like number 1 pick. Like if we're rallying behind somebody in this movie, we're going to rally behind Zero. Zero made it to the Sweet 16, but he did not make it out of that round.
Really? Oh,
he
that's
did not
surprising.
make it out. And now in fairness, he had a brutal competition in the Sweet 16. I'm trying to remember, who does he play in the Sweet 16? He has to go up against Max Fisher from Rushmore.
I would have picked Zero over Max personally.
I would have too, but it's hard to deny that Max Fisher was not going to beat that one. That was an uphill battle for Zero.
Yeah, it's true. But again, I liked Rushmore. I definitely liked the Grand Budapest Hotel more.
Agreed. I totally agree with that.
Yeah, I think that just is kind of that's seemingly consensus. But
and I think
Zero was great.
I think Zero's awesome. A much more fun character to be around.
Much more fun, and he's a more fun hero to have.
Yeah, he's an easily rootable character to center a film around. But with that said, Joel, I just have to ask you the question. Gustave, number round pick in his division, he's not showing signs of stopping. Do you see there being a future where he could get to the final championship round?
Oh, absolutely. He's a super fun likable and funny protagonist. And again, like you said, that Grand Budapest is kind of like the culmination of Wes Anderson's previous work, and it does show a lot of these stylistic choices. I mean, Wes Anderson's style follows him wherever he goes, but a lot of the set design, the way the music was written. There was an organ piece during the shootout that I just remember thinking like, this feels like it was in previous movies, but like refined. I remember thinking that while watching that scene. And
when watching that scene in particular, sorry to cut you off, but since you brought up that shootout scene, it specifically reminded me of the Life Aquatic shootout scene because of course there's reminiscent of that, of course.
Yeah.
But it was one of those ones where I'm just like, this one's just better done.
It
like,
is.
I mean, like I like the one in Life Aquatic. The humor is just like refined in this movie.
Yeah. Also, I mean, we're supposed to be talking about Gustav, but during the shootout, I remember thinking, like, I don't think our main characters are gonna die, but they don't feel like they have as much plot armor. Like, it doesn't feel like plot armor is a joke itself.
Yeah, I was very impressed because that was one of those scenes where I watched it and I specifically thought like, that's like something he did earlier in his career. Like not exactly the same scene, but the same type of humor employed in that scene. But it's done to just, I thought, grander effects in this movie.
I would agree. And I thought the shootout in Life Aquatic was hilarious still. Like I thought that scene was really funny.
Yeah, it is really funny. This one just like it felt more tied into the overall story.
Yeah.
Where Life Aquatics is more of a vignette.
It kind of just happens. Yeah.
Yeah. So this one, it just works so well. And that's kind of a lot of the things with this film where that I noticed where I'm just like, I'm watching it and I specifically think I've seen that type of character played before by that same actor, now done a little bit more with what's it called? With a specific spin on it. Like specifically, I think you could look at where am I blanking on his name? Jeff Goldblum's character of Kovacs, where it's like, I'm like, okay, that's not like a crazy far off different character that he plays in Life Aquatic, probably because they're basing it so largely on Goldblum's personality. But then when I watch it in this film, I'm just like, okay, it's just like the character of Kovacs has his specific part in the plot, and they don't try to overextend him. Not saying they overextend him in Life Aquatic, but they definitely try to tie him in more to Steve Zissou. This is just like, all right, we're going to have Goldblum come in here for like 5-10 minutes of the film, steal a few scenes, and then he's gone. Yeah. There's kind of something magical about that, where an actor can kind of just come in, be a supporting role. And that's what he is in this film. He is a 5-minute supporting role and make a huge impact.
Yeah, you'll definitely get that more with much more established actors than like, people fresh off the audition line. But but you're right.
Yeah, there was a lot of that I found in this film where I'm like, that's really impressive. Jalal, going back to Gustav, one of the qualities that I liked about him, and it was something that I felt like this whole film, to me, this is the closest we would ever see a Wes Anderson approaching a film series in the style of a James Bond, with like kind of that high globe-trotting like action adventure, like the scene where they're going down skiing. Feels like a trope that you've seen in every type of spy movie, but they just do it in such a way where it feels so fake, but yet so like just charming. It just feels like a vignette, or not a vignette, but something like a diorama of a ski.
No, absolutely. It does. That's part of the whole charm. It goes back to, Life Aquatic's claymation animals. Have the exact same feeling of, oh, this is adorable when I saw it.
Yeah, when I see that scene, I'm like, okay, that's Wes Anderson replicating maybe the style of a James Bond film without actually, the actual maybe like overall like feeling of a James Bond character. But to me, Gustav is his best attempt at a James Bond like character. I think there's a lot of similarities. One, they sleep with a lot of women. Two, it's all about money and wealth is one of the big things that people are chasing after those characters. They're always being fought and tried to kill out. Three, I think if you just look at the character of Willem Dafoe is just straight out of a James Bond character.
He is
like movie.
that hammy, and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, so I just think like with all of those things just kind of coming together, also based on the fact that Ralph Fiennes is a very well-established British actor who has been in Bond films. Like, I think it all kind of just played together that just made this Gustav character James Bond for Wes Anderson, which I really liked. I liked that style of it. It made that character's obnoxious traits or womanizing ways more palatable as me as an audience member watching it, because I'm like, okay, that's James Bond. Like, he's basically just an eccentric James Bond.
So James Bond.
Kind of, yeah. He's the James Bond. He's the James Bond that we've now come to expect with Daniel Craig.
See, the thing I really enjoyed about Gustav is that, yeah, he has, like, I'm seeing it now that you're describing it. He's also not completely infallible. He makes mistakes and he owns up to them. The scene that's coming to mind is when he's chewing out Zero for forgetting random things for the escape. I can't exactly what was on the top of my head. And then
it's like the fake nose.
He's like, where are you come from that you left your life and are now here? And he's like, the war. And then he immediately is like, yeah, I'm sorry, I take everything back. Like, it was kind of played for laughs, but it was also to show that he has a genuine heart and does care about Zero.
Yeah, I agree.
I think that's like him not treating Zero as just his lackey really sold him for me.
Yeah, and like I've been thinking about a lot of these Wes Anderson movies with the idea of it being March Madness, sometimes in the same terms that I think of like basketball in. So like if I was to devote the MVP of this movie, it's hard not to say it's Gustav, but there's also being the MVP and kind of the glue of the movie. And that's what I find Zero is in the movie. This movie falls apart if Tony Revolori is not Zero and is not as good as he is as Zero in this film. He is excellent. I cannot believe, and I'm trying to confirm it, this is really, this is his first film. He has a few small, like, short films that he's in, or he's like a character, like a side character in a bigger film, but this is his first real film. Like, this is a major role in it, and he's kind of just cast perfectly. Like, for lack of a better words, literally perfectly.
That I have to definitely obviously give credit to Wes Anderson for his directing of Zero, because the facial expressions, the lack thereof, the choosing, when to speak, how fast, the cadence, the way he speaks, everything was very fine-tuned, and I don't think we can give it just credit to just the actor on that one.
Yeah, it's a mix of both. It's the perfect sensibilities of both, and there's a lot to be said about just Revolori just coming out there, and I think we see it then later with his career. Comedic timing has always kind of been his staple, for lack of a better word. I mean, if you look at his character in Spider-Man, they've reduced the role of Flash Thompson to not even really a bully, just the comedic side character that comes in for a few like laughs. And that's and I have issues with that portrayal of it. But I mean, it's nothing against Tony Revolori. He's doing exactly what he is meant to do. And the comedy works because he's so good at delivering set lines. In this film, same thing. It's just like everything that Zero goes through in this movie, I just buy it instantly because of how good Tony is and how well he's being directed throughout. It's just a perfect, it's a perfect debut performance. Like, I don't think many actors could dream of any better of, this is my first film on my resume. Here's the film. Here's the role. You can't get better than this.
Yeah, honestly, he did a phenomenal job. Yeah,
like I said, he's the glue guy for me in this movie, where it's like he delivers on the heart and he makes the character of Gustav more likable. If you don't have Zero balancing off of Gustav, I think the character of Gustav is too extreme. He's too much. And it's the fact that he has Zero there to help him out and just kind of ground him and make that character instantly more relatable and lovable. And it just works perfectly because honestly, Ralph Fiennes and Revolori just have impeccable chemistry.
No, they definitely again, for me, I'd say the glue is not exactly Zero, but I'd say it's their relationship. It's definitely that's the heart of the film. Watching their back and forth, watching how much Zero, I don't know if the correct word is just respect or if it's just doing his job well, but still, the way they play off each other was always a treat. It was always something fun to watch.
Yeah, there's something like I think just so special with that relationship, and it plays off the father-son relationship that we've seen in basically every Wes Anderson film up to this point. It's still very similar in this movie, where it's again not a biological father and son, but they have that same type of relationship, and Zero seems to have that same level of admiration for Gustav.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes it, like I said, it just makes it feel real. And I think also Revolori just gets to be more of an actor and just play off so well, and we believe this character and everything he's going through, because Saoirse Ronan is also just really brilliant in this film in a small role, but a very just focused story along with Zero. And there's just kind of this specialness to their relationship where you just feel like they're in love, even though it's never really established how they fall in love.
Exactly. I think, Saoirse Ronan was great as Agatha. I think a lot of that is just due to the, how she's written. She's very capable. She kind of goes along for the ride. She has her own attitude and opinions about things, but overall, she wants to support Zero because she loves him.
Mm-hmm.
And she'll do what she needs to support him, even if it puts her in danger, because she's capable enough to get out of it. At the end of the movie, where it's revealed that she didn't die during the incident, because the thing is, when that's set up at the beginning of the movie, like, oh, this is Agatha, I'm not going to talk about her because it hurts me.
Mm-hmm.
You expect her death to be on screen, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's just at the very end of the movie, it's kind of just a footnote, like she was taken by disease.
Mm-hmm.
It still makes me sad to think about.
With my son.
Yeah,
well.
Exactly. Which is heartbreaking. But it was, I don't know, it goes to show how better written I'd say she was than a lot of the women in Wes Anderson films.
I agree. I think she's definitely one of the stronger ones. One of the things that you talk about right there when you're talking about the idea of just remembering the past is, I think nostalgia plays a very key theme in this movie, where you're watching these characters and it's very much Zero reminiscing on this era, which is a weird one for him because it's kind of the turning point of quote unquote civilization or civilized era versus what becomes of what we know to be World War II. Where it's just it kind of feels like any sort of innocence or just decency, common expectation of this is how we treat fellow people, is kind of thrown out and shattered in World War II. And it's never explicitly said this is World War II. You can infer though by the dates and by
the time period. 1932, I think, was the only date actually specified.
And then at the end, when Gustav dies, I think it's 1936.
Okay, so wouldn't that all be World War? No, never mind. That's 1918.
World War. Yeah, that
one is 1918. Yeah.
We're in World War II. It's pretty clear based on where they are that they're about to get into World War II, even though the words World War II are never spoken and Nazis are never actually explicitly seen, even though they're pretty heavily implied.
Yeah.
So it's this nostalgic thing where he's looking back on an era while also kind of realizing that era never truly existed.
Yeah.
where it's just like, oh yeah, this is how we grew up. But Gustav represented, I guess, like his death literally to Zero was the end of decency. And from there on only becomes pain that is brought about with World War II and disease. It's a
Right.
really interesting like framing device that Anderson does with we have an expectation of what World War II is, and then we're able as an audience to then bring our own perspective and knowledge of what World War II brings into how this film plays out. It's a really, like I said, I think it's really well done. The character that honestly, my surprise when watching this movie was the character that I'm like, I didn't remember liking as much as I did, or even really having a memory of him, was the character of Dimitri, played by Adrian Brody, who was the son of Madame D, who is Tilda Swinton's character. What a hysterically evil bad guy in this movie. Like, Adrian Brody is unlocked when he works with Wes Anderson because he's not an actor outside of Wes Anderson that I particularly care for. But in Wes Anderson, he always gets the best of Adrian Brody. And in this film, he's so ridiculous. And that's the best way to describe this character. He is the mustache twirling evil bad guy in this film, where he's just some art dealer who offs his mom in hopes of making a fortune.
Heading back to James Bond. There we go.
Exactly. And I mean, his character literally wears the twirling mustache style. Like, I mean, he is that character, and it's just like Adrian Brody.
It's very cheeky. It's very cheeky. It's very tongue in cheek, and it's nice.
He comes in there and just plays it exactly how he likes to do it. He kind of reminded me of the spoiled pompousness of what we then saw a few years later with Chris Evans in Knives Out, where I'm like, those characters have, I think, the kind of the same like approach to life. It's entitlement is what those two characters are summarized as. And then seeing it, it's just like when something doesn't go their way, they enact it in violence. That's what I just when I'm watching it, I'm like, Adrian Brody has hit something special with Wes Anderson here, where he's unlocked a degree that he's never been able to do, I find, in previous films. And then he comes in here and is able to just like be a prick, be the worst, and just like have that comedic sensibility just locked down. He's such a perfect antagonist for the character that we know Gustav to be. Jalal, real quick question for you.
Ben, real quick answer, hopefully. Maybe I won't get sidetracked this time.
Actually, yeah, let's go with that. That is the best way to phrase this question. Who is your favorite supporting character in this film? So we're counting the characters of like Ralph Fiennes, Revelori, Adrian Brody.
Right.
We're kind of counting them as the main cast. Saoirse Ronan.
Yeah, Saoirse Ronan is my pick. Agatha is my pick.
I'm saying she's a main.
Oh, you're calling her a main. Okay.
I'm kind of calling the core of the three heroes and the villain as the core of the film. So the four of them are the core. Everyone else to me is kind of the side character.
Okay, I would pick, I mean, off the top of my head, I'd say Willem Dafoe's character was fun to watch, super menacing, and just kind of remember, every time I saw him on screen, I couldn't get him in the red shorts out of my head.
I know, it's really hard.
It honestly increased my enjoyment. I thought it was funny.
It's just like, he's a guy who just commits 110% to anything he's ever done.
Anything. And it's admirable.
This role, it's like, it's so comedic because there's nothing comedic about this character. He's so straight-laced. He barely speaks in this film.
Oh yeah, he's a man of action. He's a hitman.
It's also just like the direction that Wes Anderson utilizes in this, where it's just like when he punches out Gustav and you do the zoom in of his face and then he puts up the knuckles. I mean, it's like almost like a choose your character in like a Smash Bros.
Like a fighting game roster.
Yeah, like
The
Street
select
Fighter,
screen.
anything. It's
Yeah.
just it's the straight up cuts to
Choose
the
your
circle,
fighter.
and it's done so hysterically. I will say he is great. I think my favorite side character is actually just so random. And it's just like I love when a side character can just come in, deliver a few scenes, and then have no other part of the movie.
You're
Owen
thinking
Wilson.
Kovacs? Oh, Owen Wilson. Okay.
Owen Wilson in this movie comes in for like the funniest like few scenes where it's just he's the new concierge at the Budapest Hotel. Comes in there, he's so bad compared to Gustav at his job. He comes in there, the guns are shooting, and then he's just like he's panicking. It's just this great little bit of comedic moments with him where it's just like that's a special pairing. If there was anyone else who I would also give credit to, it's three, I guess. It's the three prisoners that are with Gustav who are escaping from prison.
Oh yeah, they were fun.
Those three guys, and that is Matthew Amalric is one of them. I'm just trying to look at the list real quick. He's the only one that I see mentioned here. Oh no, Florin Lucas is Pinky, Karl Markovics as Wolf, and Volker Mikowski as Gunther. Gunther being, I think, one of the funnier of the three. If I'm correct, he's the one that just dies. He goes in there,
sacrifices himself.
Yeah, he just sacrifices himself, and it's Gustav has the line. I think that was a draw, or I think you'd call that a draw.
I think we'd call that a draw.
That's my favorite scene in the movie, is the prison escape scene. It's so ridiculous. I love when they're jumping over the beds. Like literally, you just see them like over the prison guards, the people that are all of it. Like it's such an eccentric, just way to approach an escape from Alcatraz movie, which is essentially what the scene is.
It's super goofy. It's felt like a reference to something. I don't.
Yeah, I think it is the escape.
My head.
I think it is the escape from Alcatraz. All those prisoner escape movies, where it's just like they have to escape out of the most unescapable place.
Yeah, but it was super cartoonish. It was like cartoony Prison Break, and with Wes Anderson, that kind of stuff works really well.
Agreed. It
was whimsical.
Exactly. It has that feeling of just like charm, and the characters are all playing well together, and also just costume design. Like their prisoner outfits are so what they'd be wearing.
It looked like the Monopoly man in the on those like get out of jail free cards.
Yeah,
it's like it's the stripes. It's like that. It's super cartoonish.
Exactly, and that's what I like about it. There's a lot of just random like cartoonish elements that appear in this film throughout that I just like. I like that there's this whole concierge like
club.
This club,
the White Lotus of concierges.
Yeah, where the one person's in trouble, they all must come out together.
Yeah,
like the fact
I'd say that was my favorite scene in the movie.
It's so funny because, like I said, it's just like,
are you Monsieur Gustav from the Grand Budapest Hotel? Yes. Okay, I get it.
That whole scene where they're going through it, and then they're in the Catholic church and they're at mass and all that, just like beat to beat to beat. It's just like Wes has created something so special within this film where it's just like this random world of hotel concierge in Europe can exist. And it feels so natural to what this world is already. Mm-hmm. That's what I really liked about it, along with the design of the hotel. It's just extravagant.
Oh yeah.
It's no wonder this film was rewarded for its production design. It literally is. It's literally so great to look at. It's such an interesting hotel, and it's based again on that thing of like kind of that claymation style with it, or these like really zoomed out models of it, where you can clearly look at it and you're like, that's obviously not real.
Yeah, diorama.
But it just works in this film where you're just like, I buy that this is the hotel they're all guarding.
See, the question is though, does it work in this film because it works in this film, or because we're so used to Wes Anderson's style and all of these off-kilter, offbeat kind of things, we can just kind of look at it and say, yeah, that's Wes Anderson.
To me, it works in this film because it's this idea that you've brought up before, where Wes Anderson films can feel very much like a storybook.
Yeah.
So when you see it, it kind of feels like a picture in a children's storybook that's kind of being played out. So you look at it and you're just like, yeah, that's maybe an interpretation of
Yeah.
what it's supposed to look like, not actually like real. So that's what it allows me to just be like, yeah, this is believable because this feels like a story unfolding, literally with the chapters unfolding in this movie.
Yeah, I agree with you that this works. I mean, just as a standalone film, like all these design choices and stylistic choices work in a vacuum. But it has been like this has been on my mind. I will admit it. Just that because I think something that we were noting in Life Aquatic. Honestly, I can't really remember what we were talking about there, but I feel like style over substance can sometimes play a role in.
Yeah, we've mentioned that
Because
a few times with him.
yeah, because I don't know, Wes Anderson as a director, he feels like he really adheres to this kind of these kind of visual motifs, these kinds of diorama, storybooky things. And I guess for me, it works because of my growing familiarity with him.
Mm-hmm. No, I totally get that. It's a point that I made when I had Snyder on the show, where I was talking about that like Moonrise Kingdom was kind of the last moment of like, I felt like the traditional Wes Anderson, where Grand Budapest Hotel kind of represents a bigger, larger than life Wes Anderson, where it's almost like this is almost close to parody level of what we would expect from a Wes Anderson. Now, true, I think this film is really well done. And I don't think it ever falls into the trap of like maybe some of the later films that we're going to get to with Wes Anderson. In specific, I'm talking about French Dispatch, where it's just like, it's over stylized. It's like all based in this newspaper journalist like building. It's all this huge ensemble cast, but none of them really have meaningful characters to them. All of that. This film starts getting close to those issues where I can look at it and just say, you know what? Maybe there's too many characters in this film. Maybe there's too many subplots going on. Maybe he's going very design substance over or style over substance. I think it skirts that line really close. Had it gone a little, even like a few scenes more with maybe some of the other side characters, it could have gone badly. I think this film balances it really well, where it's just like, okay, it is all of Wes Anderson's styles, motifs, direction, influence, whatever you want to say in this film. It just so happens to work, and it works really well to amazing effects. But it does start showcasing some of the problems that I think come in later Wes Anderson, where it's like, it's an over reliance of actors. It's a very over reliance on just style and framing and just like what's the word? Symmetry. It's all those things starting to come in where it's just like, it still works as this movie. It's then when he makes this movie, he gets the success. It now feels like, okay, now he's got a license to go on and make Overboard. And we're going to get to that as we go on other film. I just think this one's the one where I just start seeing the tendencies of Wes Anderson that I start to not like. And I'm like, they're in this movie. They are all in this movie. A lot of the things that I point to in French Dispatch and even at parts Isles of Dogs, those issues are in this movie. Or those scenes are in this movie. It just so happens that they don't bother me in this movie because I think the story's strong enough to support that.
Yeah, I think there it is the that's the linchpin right there. We like again, I don't have a problem with these kind of aesthetic choices because I
Mm,
think like I like that kind of aesthetic personally. Joanne and Michael's are two of my favorite stores in the entire world.
yeah.
I love going into those places. Had to go into one of them earlier today actually. But the what holds any movie together are the characters and the story. And in the Grand Budapest Hotel, as we've been talking about, pretty much everybody is memorable at least at the very worst and awesome at best. So
That's exactly where it is. And that's largely built on the fact that it's a good story.
yeah.
Because it could be one of those things where it's just like, for instance, the role of Owen Wilson, which is one that I pointed out to being very favorable, that's because it's well written. If you were to just have that scene and it doesn't really impact the overall story, I think it loses a lot of its effect. In
Then
this
it's
one, it just
literally just a cameo. And
exactly,
cameos a lot of the time are just wastes of time.
exactly. It's just like, oh, there's the expected Owen Wilson cameo in a
Oh
Wes.
look, it's Owen Wilson. Haven't seen him in a Wes Anderson movie before.
Exactly. Same with like Bill Murray or Jason Schwartzman. You just look at it and you're just like,
Oh, there they are. Okay.
there,
Like
that's the check the box. Like, there's your bingo. Jason Schwartzman's in this film type of thing.
Yep.
They're not in this film, where it is like, okay, no, they actually have like Bill Murray has such a little role, but he gets to just that role is so important to the overall story where it's just like he's a part of the concierge mafia, essentially.
Yeah.
What it is. So it's just like, okay, that's why it works, because it's just like, okay, that scene works in the film because that story point works, and then you can put an actor like Bill Murray in there to be like, oh yeah, Bill Murray is a part of the mafia for the concierges. That's why it all like works for me. But it does start getting close to that line where I'm just like, ooh, if you even like mess up, like you're now really, because he's going so heavy on style now.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing that I feel like when I'm watching this movie. I'm like, this is Wes Anderson style, undeniable.
Yeah, I think if we compare it to an earlier film, Rushmore is the one that's been on my mind recently.
Mm.
You definitely have those sensibilities. The symmetry is always going to be there in a Wes Anderson movie. It seems like, but it wasn't as at you. It wasn't
Exactly.
as in your face as say this or I'd even say Fantastic Mr. Fox. I remember just praising the set design and all of that good stuff because it's gorgeous. But I do see what you're saying. If you're a one trick pony, it can the trick can get boring after a time.
Yeah, and I wouldn't go as far as to call him, and I know you're not saying that I am calling him a one trick pony. It does, like, that is the fear, I think, where you can paint yourself into a corner. And that's like what you're known as, and these are the types of films that you're known as. For instance, in like Royal Tenenbaums, I believe like I can feel some of Owen Wilson's comedic timing in there because he's one of the screenplay writers. And like in Life Aquatic, I see some of the tendencies that Noah Baumbach brought to like a Marriage Story or a Meyerowitz stories, and see that. And then like same with Fantastic Mr. Fox, Moonrise Kingdom feels very Roman Coppola. This one, it's like, okay, this is Wes Anderson making a Wes Anderson film, and nobody else really has input in it. Like, this is his type of film. And it just, like I said, it works so well because he's such a brilliant mind. It's that time, and it's same thing I said with Snyder, where I'm just like, sometimes a director, like, they can be an auteur, but an auteur also has to be edited. And a lot of times what happens in Hollywood, you become an auteur and it's just expected that it's just like, you don't have to make your own, like you're not getting studio notes.
Yeah, that doesn't, I mean, this kind of adherence to style is just kind of a thing that artists go through. It's not specific to movies. For instance, say you have a band, you love their first album, and then they change it up for their second, you're not going to be very happy immediately. So if Wes Anderson did something very uncharacteristically stylistic, like as far as he goes, I don't know how many people would be on board with that.
Agreed. There needs,
And that's very much a for better or worse type thing, because
yeah.
sometimes those kinds of restrictions can really force you to dig in. But I mean, most, you know, if you're an artist out there listening, artist, musician, whatever, don't don't listen to me. Don't listen to what I'm saying. This is bad advice. Like, but
Yeah, and again, I'm not fully criticizing Wes Anderson because I even think like some of the stuff in his later career, I like a lot of aspects of it. It is just that tendency that I'm now starting to notice where I'm just like, this guy's getting that like not ego about him, but I can watch it and just say like they're letting him make his movies for better or for worse. And a lot of times, and I think it's why film editing is like such an undervalued thing. Editing saves a movie. Basically, in every movie that's ever been made, you need it to be well edited. Like anyone that's successful is edited.
I
And
don't know
when
about
we
the room. The room's pretty successful. It's not very well edited.
it's successful in the editing is good in the sense that it's so bad that it helps the
The
movie.
editing supported the movie.
Exactly. The
I don't know
editing
about
is
helped,
that's
but it
probably
did
the best
support
way to
it.
put it. The
Yeah.
editing is supposed to support the movie, and when people start making films where it's just like you can't adhere to editing, and I'm not saying he doesn't adhere to editing. I'm not in the editing room. I don't know how much Wes does. That's when I start getting a little worried about where it's just like you're making your type of film, but also you need to make it for like consumption to a degree. And
Yeah,
that's the business producer side of me thinking of Hollywood, where I'm just like, I like that you're doing that, but also I need to understand that like it's also just like you're not going to keep
this is an
making these
investment. You
movies.
need to make my money back. That's the thing
Exactly.
with movies in comparison to, say, painting or or writing a song. I'm not very good at it, but I can write a song all by myself. I
Mm.
definitely could not make a movie entirely by myself, and people need to fund it. Like it or not, the art that you consume is funded by external sources, and you know, everybody that's funding it has their hand in the jar for what they want it to be, because what's going to make their money back. So again, it is for better or worse, Wes having basically it's seemingly full range on his
It
thing.
feels like he has full
Yeah,
creative control.
yeah. I
And
mean,
again,
as
that
far as
only comes for better or for worse. And
yeah, as far as the Grand Budapest Hotel is concerned, I thought it was great.
I thought it's for the
Like,
better. And that's
yeah,
the also the exact it's the flip of the coin of based on everything that I just said. For better or for worse, when I was kind of illustrating the worst there, it also means that you can sometimes make the most amazing films in the world. Where if you have a full creative vision and you have something so special to tell, you make something just insanely amazing. One of my favorite films of all time is Jojo Rabbit, which is a film that it just kind of feels like, okay, they kind of just let Taika do whatever they want, whatever he wanted, and he made a film that he wanted to make. And I think it's beautiful for that. Same with Wes Anderson. I think Grand Budapest Hotel is for the better. I
yeah.
think if he doesn't get that creative control in this movie, one, the budget's probably a little bit more scaled down because it kind of just feels like in this movie, Wes is just like, I want this and this and this, and the budget's going to reflect that. And they're like, okay, that's
I
that's
dope.
fair. Like
We're
like
on it.
go picture type thing. Where had it been maybe a little bit more of a strange studio, they would have been like, do you need this prison subplot? Do you need this? Do you need this shootout here?
Yeah. I think well, same thing with all Wes Anderson movies so far. I didn't really know what I was getting into when I
Mm.
was watching it, so I didn't know what to expect. But what I really like is, yeah, comparing it to, say, Life Aquatic again, um, all of the scenes kind of worked together as a full-on narrative. Plot A led to plot B, which led to plot C. You know what I'm saying?
Agreed. It's a very complete story.
Yeah, it
where
didn't feel like it didn't feel like there were just we've talked about this so many times, but it didn't feel like there were scenes that were just outstanding. That were
Mhm.
just like you can take it and it's an SNL skit now.
Yeah, there's not really a vignette in this movie. It all ties into the overall larger story. I think you could also make the argument for this film that it's simply like, maybe excluding Fantastic Mr. Fox, it's probably his funniest live action film. It'd be pretty hard to like look at another one because this one's purely comedic. Like, I get that there are some dramatic moments in the film, but this
But
one,
we wash over that because Zero is walking over that in his retelling of the story.
yeah, this one is full on comedic, where like
I agree.
those dramatic sensibilities are there at times, but you don't get a scene like in Steve Zissou at the very end, or you don't get a scene with like Darjeeling where they're all
Yeah.
kind of coming together. Even Moonrise Kingdom, where at the end, with happens with Bruce Willis's and Sam's character. This one is just like, okay, this is a journey, and it's kind of supposed to be a laugh out loud buddy comedy film throughout. And we're not going to really worry about the dramatic effects. Now, I will say the ending is pretty touching, with just him losing Gustav and talking about like the loss of his wife and kid. Like, that's a very touching, poignant ending, but it's not like a really dramatic, sad, like kind of.
Yeah. And I think a lot of that is that we didn't watch it happen.
Mm,
So we don't really have as much connection. We didn't even know we had a kid until
yeah,
that one line where he throws it away. So we feel bad, but it's more like an oh, I'm sorry that happened to you instead of a you feel your guts sink a little bit, you know?
yeah, agreed. And I like that in this film. I like that this film can kind of just exist as its own offbeat comedy that feels wholly unique within his filmography, yet carries what we like about a Wes Anderson film. In that, I think it's really special. Jalal, as we start closing this off, uh, let's just talk about some of our just favorite aspects or elements of this film, just briefly. So I'll hit on one of them. Tilda Swinton is in this movie, just very briefly, as Madame D. Tilda Swinton does not look 88 years old. That is insanely impressive makeup. Just insanely impressive makeup. If you don't remember people who Tilda Swinton is, she's the ancient one in Doctor Strange and in Avengers Endgame. I think she's like in her 50s when this movie comes out. So because I think if you see the best makeup and hairstyle in this movie, you're probably wondering like, okay, like the makeup's good, like they all look good, but like how does this one get makeup? It's because of that character alone. That was they could submit that character transformation alone and say this is why we should deserve best makeup and hairstyling. It was kind of undeniable. uh Same with just a few of the other elements. Tough this is tough for Wes Anderson in 2014 because Grand Budapest was considered one of the dark horses to win best
Best picture.
picture and best director. It was truly down to the fact that it just had two other films that were kind of undeniable at that time, with Richard Linklater's Boyhood, which
And
was a
Birdman.
12-year, yeah, in Birdman, which was Inarritu's just like vision, like poured out, and it was a vision that was shot in one frame. It felt like, or one take. And same with, and Boyhood was shot over 12 years.
Yeah, so you can't really just ignore that one.
Yeah, it's just like both those films come out, and you're just like, honestly, like had neither of those films come out, I'd probably say Grand Budapest takes the best picture because that race was pretty close up until those two films debuted, and it was just like, how can we beat that?
Yeah, honestly, the what was like I know Whiplash was the best picture nominee for that year. What else was
Whiplash
there?
is, yeah, let's look at it real quick for that Academy Awards. That year is 2014, so the ceremony happens 2015. Honestly, the competition It's good, not crazy strong in this category. Birdman obviously wins Best
Yeah.
Picture that year. American Sniper, which is good, like it's a good film, not really talked about anymore.
Mhm.
Boyhood, which is a very special film, and again, largely special for the 12 years of just like making that film.
Yeah, honestly,
Those characters.
following a kid around for 12, you gotta. I wonder what his life is like right now. How did that mess with his development?
Yeah, like
I ask
that,
as an educator.
that film's like I said, it's kind of undeniable what that film is. Grand Budapest Hotel, The Imitation Game, which was
Okay.
just kind of in the hype of Benedict Cumberbatch, where it's like Benedict
Yeah,
Cumberbatch is the
Sherlock.
biggest
Them-
star in the world.
Yeah,
He has to
Bandersnatch
be-
Cucumber is back.
Yeah, he's playing a famous World War II scientist who's also gay. He's getting a Best Picture nomination.
Yeah, I was just like,
That's
those are all of the Oscar. That's all of the Oscar bait.
that
right there.
hits every category that you'd want. It's British. like you don't beat it. It's based on a real story.
Yeah,
Selma,
no, this is Oscar. It's all Oscar bait.
Yeah, Selma, which is the film about Martin Luther King Jr. Again, comes out in a very relevant time. Very good movie. You get the breakthrough performance of David Oyelowo as Martin Luther King. You get the director of the film, who is Ava DuVernay. Just like that's her first real huge performance. Again, one that is just like makes sense why it's in there.
Yeah, but the thing is, with those nominees, even with a few that we don't really talk about, the fact that there are 4 that still come up when you and I just talk to each other, like, Boyhood, Birdman, Grand Budapest, and Whiplash.
Yeah, those are
Like
4.
4 big ones that we'll just talk about.
I'll wrap up the list
random day.
because that was the next one was Whiplash.
Yeah,
Where Whiplash is like, yeah, that's a pretty like. I think that one's the one where you go back and it's just like Whiplash. Like I know that it got best like supporting
best sound
actor
design.
Yeah, and like all that. That's the one where you look back and you're like, that's probably a pretty easy top 5 for most people who watch films regularly in 2014. Like it's hard to imagine that one's not there. The Theory of Everything, which is to me the definition of Oscar bait. Let's get Eddie Redmayne as Stephen Hawking, but instead of focusing on Stephen Hawking, we're going to focus on his love life. I did not like that movie. I did not like that Eddie Redmayne won instead of Michael Keaton that year. And then in the category of Best Director, again, it's just this one where you look at it and it's like, it's a 3-man race really that year. It's like Birdman wins, obviously. Richard Linklater's nominated.
Not with that one track shot, dude. Oh my God.
Richard Linklater's for Boyhood, which again, 12 years. You're not going to deny.
You can't ignore that.
You can't. Wes Anderson for the Grand Budapest Hotel. And then 2 films that I liked both of, but again, it just doesn't feel like that is deserved. In Foxcatcher, directed by Bennett Miller, a film I quite enjoy with Steve Carell just turning in a great villainous performance, but one that's just like, I don't know how memorable that is. And it doesn't stand the test of time as like the other 3 that it's nominated with. And now going back, it's like Damien Chazelle probably could have gone in that spot pretty easily for Whiplash. And then the 5th one is Morten Taldum for The Imitation Game, which is just like, okay, what's he doing in there? Back then, it was still kind of like, okay, I get it, but like, you didn't put Ava DuVernay for Selma in there. You didn't put a few other actors who I'm trying to think. Who's the other big one? Oh, Nightcrawler just is missing from Best Picture and Best Director, where it's just like,
which is
weird.
Dumb. It's dumb.
It's weird. David Fincher has Gone Girl that year, which doesn't get a Best Picture or Director. So you're just looking at
but people love that movie. People loved it.
So you're looking at like Bennett Miller and Morten Taldum, and you're just like, yeah, they don't really stand the test of time to the nominations of Irarichu, Linklater, Wes Anderson. Like those 3 are like, when you go back in 2014, you're like, those are 3 great nominations. And 2 other films that I like. Don't really like, could not name the director unless I like really know movies. That's like I said, so it's a weird year Grand Budapest comes out because you're just looking at it all and you're just like, yeah, honestly, had it maybe came out like
in a worse year, Grand Budapest would have been a front runner probably.
Probably like even in the
Yeah.
year where I'm trying to think, like the year where Shape of Water wins in 2017.
Oh, 20, people hated those
I
Oscars.
like Shape of Water
People.
a
No,
lot.
people. I'm sure people like Shape of Water, but people hated that one.
Because it's one of those also the things where you look back and it's always the thing we talk about the Academy Awards just not giving the right film Best Picture. Get Out gets nominated for that year.
Yeah, that was awesome.
And it's just like you look back on it and you're like, what's the most influential, most talked about, probably most beloved film that comes out of 2017?
It
Get
wasn't
Out.
The Shape of Water.
Get Out. Like when you look at it, you're just like, how did Get Out not win that? And then 2018, had this been nominated in 2018, it beats Green Book in miles. Like if Grand Budapest comes out in 2018, I'm sorry, it doesn't even. Green Book is not the front runner in that category. So it's always about timing, and it's just like weird things, and it's also kind of shows how meaningless the awards can kind of be, where it's just like, yeah, in like 15 years, like you're probably not gonna maybe remember like that film that won Best Picture, like. Who talks about The Artist winning in
Who
2011?
talks about Spotlight?
I love Spotlight. I will not hear any slander towards that movie.
I'm not saying any slander. I'm just saying like that is the one that I remember got pointed out to me. Like this won Best Picture. Do you remember it? And I was like, well, I was. When did that come out?
2015.
Okay, 15.
It wins the year right after Birdman. And like I said, that's a movie I actually support. I think it should win Best Picture. The ones, but I'm like, but you're
but
right.
Again, but again, do people
about.
Talk about it?
It's same with like 2010 has The King's Speech when it's just like, okay, Social Network was up that year.
And again, one that people still talk about.
Yeah, and 2011, The Artist wins. And it's just like, who's watched The Artist since 2011? It's a lot of these things where it's just like, yeah, the best picture does not always reflect Best Picture.
Well, but the thing is, you can't decide what things are going to stand the test of time.
Yeah.
It's just things have to come out and you just refer to them. Like, again, I'm going to dip into my my anime sensibilities again. When My Hero Academia came out, it was like the biggest thing in the world. Demon Slayer has now been out for, I think, 3 years and has grossed $500 million for its movie. Not nearly that many people watched the My Hero Academia movie. And people thought that was going to be like the new thing to replace our original big three, which was One Piece, Bleach, and Naruto. I'm not saying My Hero Academia isn't successful, because that's just straight up a lie to say it's not. But it wasn't the thing that people predicted it was going to be.
Yeah, no, you're totally right. It is one of those things where you look back. Now, I will say there maybe was some precedent to believe that Grand Budapest was going to maybe stand the test of time. The fact that it's a $25 million budget and grosses nearly $200 million, which is by far the highest in Wes Anderson's career, that might have been a good indication that like audiences are liking this movie.
Like this one, huh?
Like I was looking at some of the other nominations and I was about to tear it down where it's just like, how do you do this? But then like, so I looked at SAG because I knew SAG has outstanding performance by the cast ensemble. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay, Grand Budapest obviously has to be nominated for best cast. And I looked and I'm like, oh, yep, it was nominated and lost. Like what beat that cast that year? And then I looked at it and I'm like, okay, Birdman did win that year. That cast, and I'm like, okay, that is kind of really an impressive cast. But it is stuff like that. So not to crap on the Oscars anymore. I'm sure they don't need any more bad publicity. I think they have enough to run for a few years after the ceremony last week. But yeah, those are all my really main points on the Grand Budapest Hotel. I think it's a really wonderful movie. I think it is one that like a lot of audiences really responded to. One of the really interesting things that, just to close this on my point, or at least this is my closing point on it, this film comes out March 7th, 2014. Mm-hmm. It is so rare for a Best Picture nomination to come out in the first few months of the year. There's a reason the fall is called Oscar season, and that's because they put all the films out there because it's the closest to voting.
Yeah,
so everyone's going to remember those films.
Yeah.
Films that get released in February are so rare. There's always usually like one, that like somehow manages, like Get Out came out in February. Coda, which one this year, came out in like January. So there are always a few that can like do it, but this is the film that year where it's just like, nope. And that's impressive because it means like you stood the whole year of like movies coming out and people still looked at you and were like, yeah, but remember how good Grand Budapest Hotel is? We should reward that. That's an impressive feat. And that is one where it's just like, because it's so much based on campaigning and it's like, who do you know? What films are you promoting? And that's enough where it's just like word of mouth was so strong on that film where it's like, it's inevitable, essentially. And that's my thoughts on the Grand Budapest Hotel. So Joel, do you have anything before we wrap it up?
I think I'm solid. I think I'm good.
Perfect. Then let's talk about the next segment on the show, which Joel, it is the Great Debate. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Great Debate. You know how this show works. I have a question prep for Joel. Joel has a question prep for me. We're going to go back and forth and hear our answers and see who has the better answer. So Joel, do you want to start this week or should I start?
I will happily start this week. Get my question out of the way. Okay, perfect. So we've seen a number of Wes Anderson films by now, and in those Wes Anderson films, there tend to be some very large casts. Which Wes Anderson characters would you like to see? Dude, why can't I talk today? Which Wes Anderson characters would you like to see as concierges of the Grand Budapest Hotel?
Oh, just so I can choose any characters from Wes Anderson films and make them a concierge at the Grand Budapest?
Even the ones from Fantastic Mr. Fox, yes.
It's funny because I was thinking Ash Fox, but he'd have to be a lobby boy.
I think Ash would do wonders as a lobby boy. He'd be lucky. He wouldn't. Zero would still be better. But...
Okay, I'm going to give three. I'm going to give my top three.
Okay.
My number three, I have to go Royal Tenenbaum from the Royal Tenenbaums. I just think there's enough of a similarity between Gustav and just the playful nature of Gene Hackman's performance in that film, mixed with the comedic and the dramatic, I think would just be a fun world to explore. It's one of those things where it pains me that Gene Hackman did not enjoy working with Wes Anderson, because Gene Hackman's maybe my favorite performer that Wes Anderson has ever got. I've said it before. If I had to vote, Royal Tenenbaum might be the guy that makes it to the final. I don't remember if that's where he was on my bracket, but I love what Gene Hackman does. And I think there's that performance, that bravado that he brings to the character that is so fitting for the concierge role. My number two, who would my number two be? I think I'd have to go Edward Norton's character, Scoutmaster Ward.
Oh, that's a good pull. Good pull.
It's just that character's so fun. I really love Edward Norton as that character. It's so comedically rich, and he's so straight-laced on everything Boy Scouts that I just think he'd bring that same type of quirky energy as the Budapest Hotel.
He would really do a genuinely good job I'm talking about the character would do a good job in that job.
Agreed. And then number one, how do you not say Mr. Fox? Straight up, like that guy could be a concierge. He has that, like, maybe not. Maybe he has, I think he has the Monsieur Gustave concierge rolled down. I don't know if I'm now thinking about it, I'm like, but would he actually do the job? Because the whole point of Mr. Fox is he's like, not happy in his job.
Yeah,
he needs something wilder. So maybe I'll strike that. And if I had to go another one, God, who would I choose? There could be an argument made for Max Fisher. No, I thought about it for a second.
I'm gonna jump in. Max was my pick.
Max
was my pick. I was thinking, he's so genuinely good at talking to people and inviting them into his world. And if you think about it, the Grand Budapest Hotel is like Gustav's world.
Mm.
That's his life. And if you had Max at that front, working that front desk, I don't know. I feel like he could bring a lot of liveliness and a personality to the hotel. So
It's a good answer.
as critical as I was of Max, I would think he would be really good in this role.
I'm going another character. I'm going Klaus Daimler.
Klaus was another one I was thinking of.
Now that I think about it, I'm like, that guy, that there's such a, the whole idea of Klaus in The Life Aquatic is loyalty to the crew to a fault. He would bring that same type of loyalty energy to the hotel, where it's just like, that is his baby that he is protecting. I think that energy makes for a great concierge. And I mean, like, yeah, so that's my answer. Do you have any more?
Max was my big one. Klaus, you hit on Scoutmaster. I was another one I was thinking of, but that popped in my head like earlier today. But yeah, Scoutmaster was a great pull. I really like that answer.
Okay, because this isn't my question, I'll just ask you real quick. Who would be the worst? Just like not my actual question. Just curious, who would be the worst?
I'd say Bill Murray's character in Rushmore.
That was my answer.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, you need the guy who cares so much versus the guy who cares so little. So it was
exactly.
Big Blue.
Immediate dichotomy.
Okay, then that was the right answer for that. So let me get to my actual question. The Grand Budapest Hotel, Jalal, seems like a very beautiful place to vacation at. If you could pick any fictional film setting to vacation at, where would it be and why?
Okay, so I was actually having a lot of trouble coming up with this because I was realizing how many of the movies I watch are just take place, even if they're really absurd, they just take place in reality.
I know, where it's just like, I was thinking that and I'm like, that's just Italy.
Yeah, honestly. Yeah, Emma Roberts, Little Italy. No. But if I could pick anything, and I do mean anything,
yeah,
there are movies in this. I would pick the Pokemon world for so many obvious reasons.
Emerald City. Not Emerald City. What's it called? Sapphire City?
Those are just the games.
No, okay, what's the name? Rhinex, right? Rye City.
What is this?
It's from the Detective Pikachu movie. Isn't it like the main city?
I didn't watch the Detective Pikachu movie.
Keep going with your answer.
But essentially, in a lot of the Pokemon movies, they go to these really genuinely interesting either cities or locations. So if I could live in the Pokemon world, I remember very specifically in this is probably just not the answer that your audience is going to care about, let's be honest. But in the Deoxys and Rayquaza movie, which came out when we were children, so probably like 6 years old, they go to this insanely high-tech city that is like, the entire thing is just basically the entire city is automated. And as much as I do not think that would be good for reality, I think it would be so cool to actually just step into essentially Tomorrowland.
It's fair.
And be surrounded by a bunch of cool Pokemon.
It's a good answer. The city I was thinking of specifically that is in Detective Pikachu is called Rhyme City.
Okay.
And it's the same idea, where I think it's essentially supposed to be like Tokyo, but it just so happens that like Pokemon are walking around with everybody. So it's just a big industrial city that just so happens to have Pokemon. And in that case, it's like, like when Psyduck's just walking around next to the characters, I'm like, I'd like to just like walk around.
Yeah, that's a good world to be in.
That's a good world. I was thinking of some answers.
Hogwarts was another one, but I'm not the biggest Harry. Like I never really grew up on Harry Potter. I've only seen one of the movies, but just exploring a place that magical, I think would be a very insane, wonderful time.
See, that's my answer.
Yeah,
I have to go Hogwarts. Like I was trying to think of some other ones. I'm like, the Shire from the Lord of the Rings could be cool.
Just go to New Zealand, dude.
Yeah, that was the other thing. I'm like, there's some Star Wars planets that would be really cool. And then just like stripping it all away, like, and I'm getting the full experience of what Hogwarts is supposed to be. How do I not want to explore Hogwarts? Like, be in that castle.
Yeah.
walk around, like fly on a broomstick, like see dragons, like play Quidditch, which is the worst like developed game in probably modern
Yeah,
history.
where one thing can decide the entire game, so why are there even other positions?
Yeah, it's just like, and I get the argument that technically Crumb caught the snitch, but Ireland won the World Cup. Like, I get it. Like, the snitch isn't the be all end all thing. But with that all said, I get it's dangerous. I get Hogwarts is really dangerous. I get that, like, being murdered on like a yearly like basis, or someone trying to kill you, or a basilisk like petrifying you, and if you look it directly in the eyes, killing you. I get that. I get the mentors floating around the school probably are not a vibe. I get Voldemort like attacking in your year 7, like and killing your friends. Not the
Hey,
greatest.
to be fair, the movie that I picked involves a giant green dragon destroying the city. So,
Yeah, so in fairness, I'm picking Hogwarts not during the Harry Potter era. I'm picking it like probably like the 3 years after the Battle of Hogwarts. But then I want to have Dumbledore. Crap. How do I get the experience of Dumbledore?
I don't know, pre-Harry Potter maybe?
Maybe, but then the issue is then Tom Riddle's there, and that becomes an issue. And then like if I'm doing it in the late 70s, 80s, that's when Voldemort's on the rise, and that seems kind of scary. So there's got to be like a good, like, the period? It's right when Voldemort falls the first time. Right when Harry Potter, like when he attacks Harry Potter for the first year, it's those like 5 to 10 years where the Death Eaters are all being rounded up. Everyone's safe. Everyone's kind of partying. Like that's
well, yours is going there to vacation for a little bit, so I guess
that's the era that I want. I think that's the safest era. I get the Dumbledores. I get the whole crew. Like Hagrid's there. It's when Hagrid's not a teacher. So it's probably a little safer. That's my answer. So I'm going Hogwarts post Voldemort's first death or first disappearance. That's my answer. With that all said, that's the show. Thank you for listening to Ben and Brand See a Movie presents The Wild Wild West, where we talk all things Wes Anderson. We'll be back. This is our only show for this week. I'm playing Lego Star Wars The Skywalker Saga ferociously this week. So we'll be back next week to close it off with our last 2 movies of Wes Anderson, Isles of Dogs and The French Dispatch. So thank you guys for joining. Make sure to be voting. All those links are on my social. Check me out on the Metaverse. You know where I am. Thank you guys for listening. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.